family is one of the most critical and often the most difficult decisions families will have making in those early years of parenthood. And we also know that parents are feeling that financial burden and pressure immensely at the moment. So with the rising cost of living, families are having to adapt to really difficult circumstances, and the cost of childcare is an enormous consideration. So with that in mind, we embarked on a journey to collaborate with Ben to give our parent and our sector community access to the right information to ensure their family's financial situation is moving in the right direction today and in the future. So no matter where you are in your family journey, there is no better time than today to learn about building generational wealth, and we are incredibly proud to be bringing this conversation to you. So on behalf of Care for Kids and Toddle, we want to congratulate you first, Ben, on your new book. We can't wait to get our hands on it, and I will happily pass the mic over to you so that we can jump right in.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. And it's so nice to have an introduction. I don't normally get introductions in these, so, thank you for that. But look, guys, today we're talking about generational wealth, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about investing and, how to invest smarter, how to do things to set up your kids. One of the things that you need to do in order to do that is to find a few extra bucks to actually pump up your investments. So if you're not already around what the guys at Care for Kids are doing, check it out. Can be one of the ways that you can save a few more dollars to create some more money for investing, looking after your kids, or maybe just spending on yourself as well. So look, guys, before we jump into the content, please don't rush out and make any life-changing decisions off the back of what we cover. I strongly suggest you seek out personalized advice before jumping in. For anyone that's new, I can see a lot of the old guard in the chat, and welcome back, guys. But for anyone that's not already around Pivot and what we do a bunch of events like this, which you can check out on Eventbrite. There's also a heap of other content. If you find this sort of stuff helpful, you can get around that. Podcast Mo Money on all the podcast platforms. You can check us out on TikTok, Insta, through the Pivot Wealth website, and a bunch of other places as well. Also, as Emily mentioned, super, super excited. My second book was released yesterday. It's called Replace Your Salary by Investing. There's a link there. You can check out some details if you're about that. For me, I think replacing your salary by investing is really the true definition of financial freedom, so that you've got enough money coming into your bank account from investments so that you're then working out of choice as opposed to necessity. This book is an end-to-end game plan to help make that happen. So, if that strikes a chord, get around it. If you do get around it, throw us a review online. That will all help in these early days as well. All right. So look, guys, I just wanted to start by framing up a bit of an example around investing for your kids, and what is actually possible when it comes to investing for kids if you take the right approach. Now, what I've used for this, and apologies, I am going to throw a few numbers at you here, but I've got an example of how money would grow based on you saving, then investing a regular amount over time for your kids. Now, this is based on the long-term share market return in Australia, which is 9.8%. That's a 30-year return at the moment. 9.8%. The past doesn't predict the future, but it gives us a rough guideline. And, basically through most periods, the long-term return has sort of hovered around that. Probably, and I think I've got this on a future slide, but a little bit more opportunity at the moment, given that the share market's down. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. So this is saving, basically starting with $0 invested today. So a lot of people think that you need a lot of money to get started investing. You absolutely don't. And we can even talk about some of the products and solutions that you can use around that today as well. But essentially just starting with $0, saving and investing a regular amount over time, how that money would grow. So if you've got a newborn today, by the time they reach age 21, if you were to save and invest $5 a day, that money would grow to be worth about $125,000 by the time they have their 21st birthday. $10 a day, $251,000. $20 a day, $500,000. And this does not involve stock picking or speculation. And I'm going to dive into exactly what sort of investments you can use to invest for your kids to get reliable, consistent returns over time and avoid chances of downsides and setbacks and those momentum killing mistakes. But you can see from these numbers that you don't need to do a lot to have a pretty significant impact. Now, this works, obviously, I'm talking about investing for your kids. It also works for investing for yourself. And I think when it comes to intergenerational wealth and doing things to set up your kids, That's all great and important, but you've also got to put your own oxygen mask on first as well. So whatever we talk about when we're talking about kids, you can think about that for yourself as well. Now, $5 a day, and I get that we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, interest rates are right up, inflation is a real thing, but $5 a day, most people can find that. That's like a cup of coffee, depending on where you buy coffee. And, $125,000, that's a decent chunk towards a property deposit, if not the whole thing. Who knows what property is going to cost in 21 years, but that inflation is a thing. But I can tell you what, $125,000 is a lot better than not $125,000. And you see, if you can do a bit more, if you're in a position to be able to do that, you can create a pretty significant little, 21st birthday gift. I wish I was getting $250,000 on my 21st. I just got I can't even remember. I think I got a chain or something. But anyway, that's an aside. So the opportunity is real. And I think that thinking about the markets and where things are at the moment, like share markets down, property markets down, crypto markets down, upside potential is huge. And those numbers that I showed you, they're about long-term investing. And that's certainly the approach that you should take, but it's hard not to see the writing on the wall, where you can see that these, no doubt there's challenges out there, but we've got quality companies which are now trading at a discount to what they were not too long ago and have bright futures in front of them. So, there's only so many golden years that you get for investing. I think the next 12 to 24 months is going to be one of those periods. The 2020 COVID crisis was another one. Before that, it was a 2015 Euro crisis, 2008 financial crisis. That if you want to create real generational wealth and put yourself and as in your family yourself, in a strong position for the future, you need to take advantage of investing in these downturns. And if you look at people that are really successful, the people that have created generational wealth, most of them are ones that they've created a significant amount of their money during periods of the downturn. But you have to get started. And there's a very real thing out there that fear, and there's a lot of fear out there at the moment, that fear leads to inaction, and that leads to missed opportunities. And look, I get that everyone's situation is unique for sure, but I've found that there are some really common challenges that hold people back when it comes to their money, investing, getting ahead and setting themselves up. The three biggest ones that I see here is information overload. So it's like there's so many options, so much information. It's like you're drinking from the fire hose, really hard to know who to listen to and who to trust. The second is people struggle to really find balance. They struggle to find balance between getting ahead financially at a rate that they're happy with and living a good lifestyle at the same time. That balance is important to find, but it's difficult to find. And then the third one is FOMO, the fear of missing out. It's also the fear of making a mistake, the fear of doing something dumb that ends up costing you a bunch of money that you later regret. So what we've found is that those three challenges lead people to get stuck, and it's often stuck not doing nothing, but you're stuck doing the same thing that you've been doing in the past. And what that really means is that you're missing the opportunity to be getting better results and getting more out of what you have right now. So what we've found, and we'll talk a bit about these elements as we go through today, that there's three main areas that you need to get right when it comes to your money. You've got your structure. That's about making it easy to save, finding the money that you, finding spare money that you can invest, and making it clear how much money you've got to direct to things like building generational wealth, investing for the future, paying down debt, or whatever the case may be. That ties in with the next element, which is your strategy. And with the strategy, it's all about really understanding the different pathways that can take you from where you are to where you want to be or your goal. So whether you buy shares, whether you buy property, whether you pay down debt, whether you crank your super, if you're investing for the kids, do you do it through different platforms? Do you do it through different tax structures? Like, what do those actually look like? And then breaking it all down into a really clear game plan where you know exactly what your next steps are and when they're happening, so that you feel like you're on the front foot with stuff. The third, and this is a really important one, is the solutions or the investments that you use to back up your strategy. So here you want to get reliable, consistent progress over time, and importantly, avoid the chances of downsides and setbacks and those momentum killing mistakes. The three elements are all important, and if any one of them is missing, it ends up dragging down on the others. So if you don't have good investments in place, it's like you're going to blow up your cash. That's going to be bad. If you don't have a good strategy, you're leaving a bunch of money on the table. You're probably leaving a lot of peace of mind on the table. and it's going to be hard to put yourself in a position to take confident action. If you don't have a good structure, it's like you're working with a leaky bucket, and it's really hard to make good decisions there as well. So the three elements are all crucial and important ones that you need to get right. I wanted to share this quote from James Clear. If anyone hasn't heard of James Clear, Atomic Habits was like an ultra global bestseller a while back. And his quote, and I think it's particularly relevant when it comes to nailing it with your money and setting up generational wealth, that he says, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And I think that when you think about investing and your money success, you need to systemize that success as much as you can, because that's what ensures that you actually get the results that you want over time. It's not just about having great ideas or great intentions. It's like you need a process and an approach that's going to deliver the outcomes that you want. And that's exactly what we're going to cover off as we go through today. So I wanted to start, though, talking about investment basics. Now, some of you guys will know some of this stuff already, but I'm just going to start from the super basics, talking about investments, how they work, and how it fits together. Lee Online has said she seconded the Atomic Habits. It is a great book. It's really awesome. And actually, I was going to mention a little bit earlier as well that, guys, as we're going through today, if you've got any questions, I am going to have some time for questions at the end. And thank you to everyone that submitted questions through Care for Kids ahead of today. I've got a list of those to cover off as well. If you've got any questions as we're going through the content, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A. You can throw any banter into the chat, but if you want to get your questions answered and make sure that they don't get missed, if you could just pop those into the Q&A, and I'll cover off some as we go through, and I'm going to have some time at the end as well. Chris, thank you for that. I love the enthusiasm. I might just circle back to that one if I can. So talking investment basics, the first thing that is important for you to understand is the difference between growth investments and defensive investments. Defensive investments are things like cash, term deposits, and bonds. They're generally stable investments, income-producing investments. And if you think about something like cash, for example, in Australia, cash is government guaranteed up to $250,000, meaning that up to that level, you've got no risk of losing money when you're saving in cash. As soon as you go more up the spectrum into bonds and term deposits, there is a slightly higher level of risk in that you're tying up your money for a period of time. There's a bit of risk that comes with that as well. But those defensive investments, they're as I said, stable income producing investments that are less likely to go backwards. Then you've got growth investments, which, as the name suggests, are investments that are designed to grow for the future. Property, Australian shares, and international shares. These shares over the long term, you'd expect to generate higher returns, but they're also ones that can go up and down more in the shorter term. So one of the first big questions that you need to ask and answer as an investor, and particularly if you're investing for generational wealth, is that you need to say, how much money do I want to have allocated to defensive investments, and how much money do I want to have allocated to growth investments? I'll give you my take on this, but there's one, I just want to talk about the investment timeline before I do that, because when it comes to growth investments, they say that the suggested investment time frame for growth investments, property, Australian shares, international shares, that's 7 to 10 years or more. Now, the reason that they say that, because with shares, you can buy shares today and you can sell them same day, or you can sell them tomorrow. But the reason that they say that the suggested investment time frame is 7 to 10 years or more is because if markets start going really poorly and there's a big market crash, you need to be prepared to leave the money there for that length of time to wait for the market to actually recover. And if you look at this timeline here, you can see share markets going up, share markets going down over time. If you buy shares today and in 3 months' time the markets are up and you want to sell them so that you can buy a property, or give the money to your kids so that they can use it as a house deposit or whatever, great, you can do that. But if the markets are way down at any point in time, you need to be prepared to leave the money there until markets recover, or be prepared to accept a loss. But that's obviously not a good outcome. So understanding that timeline for growth investments is something that's all important. Now, when you think about investing, one of the biggest drivers of the sorts of investments that make sense is how long the money is to be invested for. Because if you need, for example, if you've got a few bucks in the bank that you need to pay your kids' school fees in 3 months' time, it would be quite risky to invest that money into the share market because who knows where the share market would be in that time. And what we would generally suggest in that case is that you keep the money in cash so that you know that the money's available when you need it. Similarly, if you had a certain nest egg and you were just about to retire, having all of the money invested into shares might be a bit risky because and this actually happened to my uncle in the financial crisis, that he probably got a tiny little bit greedy with all of the share market returns leading up to the financial crisis, had all of his money invested in shares, and then the share market tanked. And he wanted to get the money out, but it didn't make sense to sell. Now, he had quality investments and they ended up recovering, but he had to wait for a whole bunch of time for that to actually happen. On the flip side, though, that if you're investing, and particularly if you're investing for your kids, say you've got a 1-year-old today and you want to give them a gift when they're 18 or 21, and you know that the money's there invested for 17 years, 20 years, that you definitely have the time for markets to recover. And looking at timeline alone, that would suggest that you want to have more shares and low or no cash or defensive investments. So reason being is that if you've got defensive investments like cash, then the benefits is stability and income, but you don't want to spend the income. So the income's not really that beneficial. And the stability is also not that beneficial because you know that the money's there to be invested for the long term. So that's an important decision that you need to make. I see a couple of questions coming through about ETFs and how to choose. I'm actually sort of stepping through this risk piece and building into that. So if it's okay, I might just circle back to that one as well. Now, another thing that you need to know is good risk versus bad risk. And when the main way to think about this is big company risk versus small company risk. Now, on this image here, I've got company one and company two. Think of company one like a premium, like a big company, something like CBA, what you would call a blue chip company. Been around for a long time, really stable, a lot of assets, nice diversified income stream. That, yes, the shares are going to go up and they're going to go down over time, but over the long term, you'd expect the shares to increase in value. Company two, you can think of that like a tech startup company where they're trying to crack the code for the next big thing, and the share price, maybe it's going to be much more ups and downs. Yeah, they think they found it, great, the market loves it, share price goes up, oh no, there's an issue there, share price goes down. Smaller companies, less assets behind them, less diversified income streams, much more higher, what you call a higher volatility profile. Now, a lot of people think that when you start investing into growth investments, and the reason that I put this slide in here, people think that when you start investing into growth investments, you need to include these speculative higher risk type investments in your portfolio. You absolutely do not. And in my opinion, for a lot of people, it's not appropriate. It's not something that they should be doing with their investments. All it means is that all you really want to be doing if you pick a higher growth investment portfolio, just means that you've got more quality shares, more of the premium blue chip type shares like Commonwealth Bank than the smaller companies and CBA cash, essentially. If you think about it, and it's a really natural thing that we're drawn to, because when we invest, we want to shoot the lights out with every investment and we want to get great results, like, strong return quite quickly. But higher return does mean higher risk. And you don't need the higher returns. We saw in that example that I shared at the start that based on the long-term share market return of 9.8%, that you can create some serious wealth just from doing that. So you don't need to pick the next big thing or take on huge amounts of extra risk. Now, for people that are investing in their personal name, if you're really interested in smaller company or more speculative investments that have high potential upside, you can do that. Well, of course, you can do it with all your money. It's your money. It's just, in my view, it's probably not something that makes a ton of sense. Well, you don't need that level of risk. But if you are, you can. If you are particularly interested in those sorts of investments, you can. But you want to just limit how much of your investments are going into that so that you're not placing your money at risk. If you're investing for your kids and for the future, I think you probably want to have more of those reliable, consistent investments. So you want to try and avoid the more speculative stuff as well. Now, diversification is a really important, powerful, and effective risk management technique. Diversification just means spreading out your risk. So in this chart here, I've got two companies. You could think of them both as quality premium blue chip type companies. Think of Commonwealth Bank and Woolworths. These are two companies that are stable. They've been around for a long time, good income streams. Like I said, what you'd call a premium investment. If you were to get $10,000 and put half into Commonwealth Bank and half into CBA, the return that you would get would be the average of the two returns, because when CBA is going well and Woolworths isn't going very well or as well, the return that you would get would be balanced out and sort of in the middle. And you can see that the dashed line that goes through this slide, that it's smoother than any one of the two individual lines. Now that's diversifying into two different investments. If you diversify into 20, 200, 2,000 investments through using something like a managed fund or ETF, I'm not suggesting you go and buy 2,000 individual shares because practically that would be quite difficult. But if you do that, the smoother your returns become over time. And here's the thing, the more that you diversify, or the more diversified your investment portfolio is, the less dependent your returns are on the performance of any one company. So that means if one company goes bust, even if it's a big one, which is generally unlikely, but it does happen from time to time, that the actual impact to your investments and your investment performance is going to be much lower. So the diversification, really important, really powerful, and something I think everybody should be looking to do. Now, I want to talk about the market, and then I'm going to talk about index funds and active funds, which is the last real choice that you need to make when you're picking the types of investments that you're going to use. Now, the ASX 200 is what's called an index. So apologies for the jargon, but it's called an index of the 200 largest companies in Australia. So you might see on the news at night or on Yahoo Finance or whatever, or you see it online, the ASX has gone up by 1%, down by 1%, or whatever the case may be. All that is the combined value of the 200 largest companies in the country. We know what their value is. When I did this, and this data is a tiny bit old now, but the total value of those 200 companies combined was $1.6 trillion. We know how much CBA is worth. CBA is worth about $200 billion. So therefore, it's 9%-ish of the total value of the 200 largest companies in the country. And, all of the other big companies are listed there. This is all publicly available information. What an index fund does is it just replicates the exact percentages of those companies in the same order and the same proportions. And therefore, the ASX 200 is an ASX 200 index fund will generate the same return as the combined value of the 200 largest companies in Australia. That's why index funds are also referred to as tracking funds, because they just or passive funds, because they passively track the share market and deliver the share market returns. Now, you've basically got two choices when you invest. Do you invest in a passive index fund, or do you invest in an active fund? Now, with an index fund, generally highly diversified, they're very low cost, a lot less time to manage, because all you're betting on, and I don't really like that term when it comes to investments, but all you're relying on is that the share market, the big companies will continue to do good business and make good money over time and grow in value, which seems like a pretty much a sure proposition so long as capitalism remains alive in Western countries. Now, with an index fund, the other big benefit, and I don't think this one should be understated at all, but you should be able to sleep like a baby at night when you're using index funds, knowing that the only way that your investments can go to zero is if every single company in the country goes bust at the same time. And I can tell you that if that happens, you're going to have much bigger problems in your investment portfolio. We're talking about nuclear winter, zombie apocalypse type situation. Now, the alternative is what's called an active fund. And it could be like a managed fund or an ETF or like a micro investing option. We'll talk a little bit about those different types of investments in a sec, but it's basically an investment fund that invests differently to the market overall. So it's normally there's a fund manager or a research house or sometimes even a computer algorithm where they're saying, we're going to follow this particular approach and choose slightly different investments to just tracking the overall market. So they're going to have different businesses in there. Now, with an active fund, they're generally fairly well diversified. They are a little bit less diversified than an index fund, but they're generally pretty well diversified. The selling point of an active fund is that they have the potential to outperform because they're picking different investments that they think will perform better. They have the potential to perform better than the market. There also can be good if you're close to or in retirement. Active funds can be good because they can put different investments in your portfolio that are designed to create more stability, and that stability can be quite valuable if you are getting closer to the time where you want to be living on your investments as opposed to just growing your investments. But here's the thing: the stats show, and for anyone that's particularly interested in this, you can go onto this website. It's called Spiva, SPIVA, and they compare all of the index funds that are available versus all of the non-index funds that are out there. And their stats show that in Australia, index funds perform better more than 82% of the time. Globally, the number is much higher. So active funds do have the potential to outperform, but the stats show that index funds win more than 80% of the time. So you've got a much higher probability of getting good results using an index fund. Now, if you spoke to 10 different financial advisors, you might get 10 different opinions on this. And it is a philosophical thing. It's what is the philosophy? Now, personally, I follow an index fund investing philosophy. We advocate that quite a lot with our clients as well. I fully recognize and appreciate that there's a lot of different ways to be right when it comes to investing. So I'm not saying it's the only way. And I have seen other ways work well for people in the past. But I know with index funds, for me, the reason that I do it is I'm confident that, like I said, I can sleep like a baby at night, knowing my investment's going to do what they're going to do. Yes, they will go up and down, but that's the game of the market. And what that also means for me, and I invest for my kids. I've got two gorgeous daughters. They're 3 and 2. I invest for them, and all of those investments are in index funds. I'm not trying to stock pick for them. I'm just trying to get market returns over time and just consistently add to those so that they've got some money there for them in the future. Tax planning is pretty crucial, and I can see that there's a couple of questions about tax as well. It is an area that can be quite confusing for investing for your children. So I wanted to unpack that before I get into choosing the actual types of investments that are out there. So tax rates are different for different entities. These are the personal marginal tax rates. So in Australia, for individuals, i.e. individuals over the age of 18, we're subject income from investments is subject to tax at our marginal tax rates. So the first $18,000 that we earn, we don't pay any tax. From $18,000 to $45,000, we pay 19% on the income earned in that bracket. 45 to 120, 34%. 120 to 180, 39%. 180 plus 47%. Now, one thing that does sometimes throw people off is that even if your income was, say, $200,000, so you're well in the top marginal tax bracket, you still pay 0% tax on that first $18,000 you earn. You still pay 19% in the bracket between $18,000 and $45,000, 34%, so on and so forth. The implication, though, when it comes to investing is that if you're already earning an income from like a salaried income, and you're in one of these tax brackets, is that any investment income that you generate for investments that you own are going to be taxed at whatever your marginal tax rate is, because you only get one tax rate. You get one tax rate where you get all of your salaried income, commission income, overtime bonuses, investment income, interest income from bank accounts, rental income from investment properties, basically all adds together and then gets taxed at your marginal tax rate. And if you're already earning, say you're already earning $120,000, you're in the 39% bracket. You earn $120,000 for your salary, 39%. But then if you earn $3,000 more from dividend income on a kid's share portfolio, that's going to be taxed at 39%. So you need to be aware. You need to be aware of that. But there are options when it comes to, where you invest and who owns investments, and therefore you have some control and influence over the tax that you pay. So if you invest in your personal name, you pay tax at your marginal tax rates. If you invest under your kid's name, get them a tax file number, then there is tax that applies, but there are special tax rates that apply for kids, and the tax rates are quite punitive. That essentially they can earn $400 completely tax-free, then income between $400-ish and it's just over $1,000 is actually taxed at 66%. So it's higher than the top marginal tax rate. And then any income earned over this $1,308 mark is taxed at 45%. So again, top marginal tax rate. So the tax implications can be significant if you do that. I'm going to unpack that in a little bit more detail as well. You can use investment bonds for investing for your children. They can be great because they have an internal tax rate of 30%. So you don't pay more than 30% tax on the income, dividend income, as the investments are growing. And if you hold an investment bond for longer than 10 years, their capital gains are completely tax-free. You can also invest through your super or contribute to super for kids. So you can set up super funds for your kids and contribute to super for them. They have much lower tax rates, but there are restrictions around access. So that's something to be aware of. And you can invest through a trust and or proprietary limited company. And if you do that, you basically don't need to pay any more than 30% tax on the income. That's just to frame it up. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can choose. I wanted, though, to give this example saying what tax actually looks like across a family unit and show that if we had $10,000 of investment income, how much tax would different, mum, dad, kids, super fund company pay? So you see here that if we got mum earning $125,000, her tax rate would be 39%. She pays $3,900 in tax on the $10,000 of investment income. Dad's on a slightly lower income, slightly lower tax rate, $2,100 in tax. If we had the income for a 15-year-old daughter, so a minor daughter, she's taxed 47%, $4,700. 18-year-old daughter, because she's over 18, $0. And then you got super fund and company. So there's a difference of $4,700 or 47% between the lowest tax rate entity and the highest tax rate entity. So it can be, depending on, particularly when you, depending on how much you're investing, can be quite valuable to be really strategic around how you own your investments, where you own your investments. Some general guidelines, though, to think about, and obviously this is not advice, but if you're wanting to invest for your kids, that owning the investments in your own name is relatively simple and easy. You do have to pay the tax on the accounts, and you need to plan around that. But it's a simple way to invest, and particularly if you're just getting started and you're not investing huge amounts of money, then it might be the easiest of the options. At lower levels, the differences between them are going to be less in terms of dollars. So that can be a simple option. If you invest in your kid's name under their tax file number, to me, it's a bit crazy because the tax, you're going to pay more tax. The only way that you wouldn't pay more tax is if you were already in the top marginal tax rate, the tax bracket, and therefore paying the top marginal tax rate. But in every other case, you would pay less tax, and you wouldn't pay any less or more tax from owning it in your kid's name, even if you were in the top marginal tax bracket. So there's no benefit, and there's a lot of potential downside. If you're investing, though, higher amounts of money, like you're seriously cranking investments for your kids, then you want to probably look a little bit more closely at using other tax entities like investment bonds or trusts for bigger dollars, or even super funds for higher net wealth if you're already capping out there as well. So there are some options, but yeah, and I get that it's confusing around the tax, but know that you only need a starting point as well, that you can change things over time. And I find that a lot of people, they get so confused, not sure what to do, end up doing nothing because it is just confusing, but they've missed the opportunity to actually be building momentum. Be aware that if you are investing for your kids, that you're investing, you own the accounts, you own the investments in your name, that you will need to put aside and then pay the tax on the dividend income from those investments as well. All right, types of investments that you can use. So there's basically 5 options that you can use for investing. You can invest into direct shares and, pick shares in a particular company, pick a share like Commonwealth Bank or Woolworths or whatever. Managed funds, ETFs or exchange traded funds, they're increasingly popular and for pretty good reason. Micro investing apps, and then they've got child specific, generally micro investing apps. So I'm going to unpack each of them in turn. With share investing, you own small slices of one particular company. You share in the profit and the growth of that company. in Australia, if you own shares in Australian companies that are paying dividends from Australian earned income, they generally pay tax in Australia, they pay corporate tax before they pay the dividends out, and you get a credit for that tax, which is called a franking credit, or franked dividends is another term that gets used. That basically means that the company has already paid part of the tax, and therefore you get that tax credit. So it can be nice and tax efficient. You do get more control by investing directly into shares because you can choose the companies that you believe in that you think will do better. But the flip side of that is that your investments are generally much less diversified when you invest in direct shares as opposed to using like a managed fund, an ETF, or a micro investing option, or a kid specific option as well. When you invest in shares, the brokerage, you need to use a share broker account, something like you can use an actual mahogany desk stockbroker, or you can just use an online broker like CommSec or Perla or Selfwealth, and you will need to pay a fee though for that brokerage. They can be as low as $3, can be up to like $20. And if you're buying multiple shares at the same time, that brokerage can add up. So it's something to be aware of as well. Managed funds is where you've got a pool of investors that are pulled together to invest into shares. So that can be great in that you buy a managed fund, one managed fund, and that in turn invests in 100 different shares. Nice and diversified because the investors are pooled, that you generally get some economies of scale, so the costs are lower. One of the things with managed funds though is because you're in a pool with investors, that the tax consequences are pooled as well. So if you've got some investors buying and selling, a market's going up or down, that those tax consequences get spread across all people in the managed fund. And one of the downsides of managed funds that I find, although this is getting better, but they are a little bit admin heavy in terms of the paperwork that you need to set them up and manage them moving forward. The other options are exchange traded funds. So exchange traded funds are like a hybrid. It's like a share that you buy on the stock exchange, but it's like a managed fund in that when you buy one exchange traded fund or one ETF, it in turn invests in a number of underlying shares. You own a tiny little slice. So there is, for example, ASX 200 index ETF, where you buy that one ETF and you own a small slice of the 200 largest companies in Australia. That, like managed funds, give you quite good diversification. There are brokerage costs, although the brokerage cost will typically be less because you're generally just buying one ETF instead of buying a whole different bundle of shares. And with ETFs, you do get a little bit more control over the tax benefits, over the tax consequences, specifically that you're not in a pool with other investors. So if you buy your ASX 200 ETF, and you don't sell it, that you're not going to pay capital gains until you sell based on the actual shares that are in your investments. That's not, and the reason I hesitate slightly is that it gets quite technical with this, but there are sometimes minimal distributed capital gains tax consequences, but you have a lot more control is the headline version there. Micro investing is a great place to get started and can be awesome for investing for your kids as well. Micro investing apps started in the last decade and basically allow you to fractionally invest into shares, managed funds, or ETFs. Some of them allow you to start with as little as 1 single cent. So that basically takes away all of our excuses for getting started because you can start with literally 1 cent. Fees are generally pretty low and lower, particularly if you're investing small amounts regularly. The other really good thing about micro investing apps as an option is that they have a focus on UX or user experience, meaning that they're generally really easy to set up, open, and use and automate your investments as well. You can download you can download one of these apps from the App Store on your phone and really quite quickly set up an account and be investing like in a snap and automate your investments moving forward. So they can be great. We've also got, and there's more and more, and I'm so glad to be seeing this happening, but there are some child-specific investment accounts that allow you to invest for your kids as well. There's three that I'm aware of at the moment. Perla have just released one called Head Start. Raise have an ability to invest for your kids within that. Raise Invest, the micro investing platform. Spriggy is another one. And with those accounts, one of the really cool things that they offer is that over time, as your kids get a little bit older and they understand a little bit more, you can actually give them access or restricted access to the app, and you can use it as an educational tool to teach them about investing in investment markets. Be aware, though, that you don't need to use a child-specific account in order to invest. You can use any of the other options for investing as well. So I feel like that's just something to call out. Question here, Nikki says, would love you to touch on Perla as an option for platforms micro investing. Yeah, so Perla offer this Head Start app. They also offer a micro investing, an app that allows you to do micro investing and ETF investing as well. Jimmy's got a question, says, how many ETFs should you have in your portfolio? I would say it depends on you, Jimmy, but one is definitely enough. Yeah, so you don't necessarily need more than one, particularly if you're investing in an ETF that has some Australian shares, some international shares, and is like what's called a diversified ETF. One is probably a really good number. You don't need to diversify. It's like you don't sometimes, and one of the mistakes I see, I just put a post out on this, that sometimes people think that they need to diversify with multiple super funds, but they don't. Because your super fund, as long as your one super fund is diversified, as long as your one ETF is diversified, then that's generally enough. I will say when it comes to choosing, and I appreciate that there's a lot of options there, I wanted to unpack them so that you knew what was out there, but below $200,000, the actual dollar difference from a performance, fees, or tax perspective of any of those options is going to be pretty small. If you are just getting started, it's going to be negligible, like you're talking about less than $50 a year, depending on how much you're starting with. So while there are a bunch of different options, and over time you can get really, strategic and considered around this, then you want to just focus on a solution that's easy and that allows you to get started. Micro investing is a great place, particularly if you're starting with a low amount. In my view, when you look at the fees, the access, and the ease of doing it, micro investing is an awesome place to start. And yeah, I would just say that getting started is much better than getting it perfect, because we don't know what perfect is until after the fact. So you can start and then you can pivot and change what you're doing over time as well. Now, I just want to talk about structure quickly, and particularly talking about managing your money. And I want to talk about like how you can actually find some extra cash to invest more for your kids. Now, when you're allocating money, whether it's your income from employment or savings that you've got in a bank account, you've essentially got two choices. You can allocate it to your spending today, all of these costs that you can see here, or you can allocate it to your spending in the future. Future is your savings and investments. And look, the key is that if you want to, particularly if you're investing for your kids or for yourself, the key to getting good results from your investments, there are two things that you need to do. The first is you've got to choose good investments. Hopefully the stuff that we've covered gives you some sense of that already. The second is you need to make sure that you're never forced to sell investments at the wrong time. How you do that is make sure that all of the spending that you want to do on the today side of things is provided for. And there's only so many types of expenses that we have. That's why you have your, your fixed cost, that's your rent bills, the boring stuff, spending, that's your walking around money, debt, everyone's least favorite category, and then your lifestyle expenses. Now, if you've got enough money put aside to cover those expenses when they come up, you know that the money that you've got left over, you can invest that comfortably and you're never going to be forced to sell. This is why, and something where I see a lot of people do something which is a fairly risky strategy, is that they think they've got a little savings account, but it might be savings for upcoming spending, i.e. school fees for their kids, and they will invest that money while it's sitting there waiting, maybe even using like a micro investing app. But no one knows where the market's going to be in 3 months' time when you need to pay your school fees, and it's possible that the markets will be 40 or 50% down from where they are today. So that is a pretty risky strategy, in my opinion, and something that I would not advocate you doing. When it comes to your own money, though, and how do you actually carve out some money for kids, it's about figuring out how can you squeeze what you can out of these areas here. Now, creating the savings capacity is critical. There's a few things that you can do. When it comes to fixed costs, prioritize what's actually important. So these are your bills, and it's easy for like subscriptions to creep into your spending that actually aren't that important to you, that there aren't things that you value too much, but because the payments are automated and you don't have to think too much about them, they just there constantly. So you want to take a look at your fixed expenses and say, what's actually important to me here and what can I deprioritize? Using comparison sites for your regular costs is also generally a good idea. Care for kids, obviously, and that's what I sort of was alluding to at the start. Childcare is one of the biggest expenses for a lot of parents. So, saving some money there makes a lot of sense. It can create some serious money to not only invest a bit for your kids, but to, spend on yourself or invest in yourself a little bit more as well. Also, though, things like utilities, insurances, and those sorts of costs, a lot of comparison tools out there that can help you to save a few bucks. With spending, the key is that you want to separate that spending into one account. Where I see people that can go a little bit wrong is either spending on credit or spending out of an offset account. And what happens with that is that you don't have to ever think about how much money you're spending, so you end up spending more. I'm a big fan, and I do this personally. I've got a separate debit account for my debit spending. I know how much money I've put in there each week, and it's attached to my phone. I can tap until the money is gone and spend guilt-free, but I know that how much is in there. And that I've found to be really powerful. We do that a lot with our clients as well. When it comes to debt repayments, there are two things. One, make sure that you've got a good mortgage broker in your corner that can compare the market and make sure that you're making money. That you're not paying more than you need to when it comes to your mortgages. Secondly, if you've got personal debt, credit cards, or personal loans, and you're paying higher interest rates, shop them around and get rid of them ASAP, because that is going to be, it's like you're taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or you're working with a leaky bucket. So that's a really important one, can free up some cash as well, particularly at the moment, higher interest rates. The mortgage market is competitive, so shop around and get a better deal there. Lifestyle, segregate your lifestyle expenses, and that's your bigger ticket spending like travel and those sorts of things, again, so that you've got clarity on how much you're allocating to that. But importantly with this, and this sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but allow for unexpected expenses in your budget, because these things will happen. I was talking to a mate the other day, NIT outbreak in her household, and she had to spend like a few $100s on all these treatments and stuff. Nightmare. That was the second time that it had happened in just a few months. Just made me think of that. But, unexpected things we know will happen. Smash your phone, drop your laptop and need to get a replacement, bingle the car, whatever. These things will come up. And if you don't have some money put aside for them, they can throw you off. So make sure that you do. Then you know that the money is left, that you can leave it there for investing. You're never going to be forced to sell your investments at the wrong time. Savings, you want to keep that money separate to drive your motivation and drive clarity on what you're doing as well. So I want to cover off on some of the myths and mistakes that can hold people back around investing and building generational wealth. The first is that they don't have or earn enough money to invest. Look, as I mentioned, that micro investing, you can start investing with as little as 1 single cent. So I feel like that's not an excuse. Doesn't matter how much money you're earning. Everyone can find that. And here's the thing, and I know this for like I've seen this a lot through my experience with people, that doing anything feels like progress, and you will increase it. If you start investing $1 a day today, or 1 cent a day today, within 3 months, you're going to be investing more. I can tell you that for sure, because you start paying attention, you start getting more motivated, you find some ways to make the extra money, and before you know it, you're increasing. You got to build the habit, build the muscle. Choosing bad investments that'll fail. There's a relatively simple solution there, which is buying a slice of the entire share market. Using index funds, they're tried and tested, simple, reliable, consistent. You don't have to stress about that. Not trusting the stock market is another thing, but really understanding the risks that are out there and how to manage them should go a long way to getting rid of that risk. Another one that I see is income and spending is variable, and consistency is impossible. You can create your own consistency with that banking framework that I mentioned. That's what we call our smart money system, where you can see you've got your different accounts, and it doesn't matter what your frequency of pay is. You can create your own consistency there. Not knowing how to set targets or expectations, that all you need to do with that is learn the tools of the trade, and specifically learn how to use a compound interest calculator and how that works. You can check, there's actually a how-to video on the Pivot Wealth website on my book page to check that out as well. I probably should have put the link in here. I just thought of that then. But learning how to use a compound interest calculator will allow you to set good targets and goals around that as well. Unknown unknowns is a common one. You just need to uplift your money knowledge so that you can build and flex that muscle. Needing flexibility to change is another common one as well. And you just need to build flexibility into your system to get there. So guys, look, I want to share this model with you in terms of where to from here. And I think, when people think about getting from where they are to future state with their money, like ultimately in the future, you're going to be in one of four positions, ranging from really good to not very good at all. When people think about getting from where they are to where they want to be, though, they think of their progression like a straight line, but it's actually not. Because of the compounding impact of time and money, it's actually a curve. So if you're not 100% on track to end up exactly where you want to be today, you need to do some stuff in what we call jump the line. You need to start that savings account, investment account, pay off that bit of debt, get better with your savings or budget or whatever. And once you do that, then you just need to take the next step and the next step and the next step, which is easier because you're already on the path. But here's the thing, that the longer you leave it, the more time goes on, that the jumping the line becomes more and more painful, and putting yourself in the best position possible can become impossible. So it doesn't matter really what money success is for you or what your goals are around generational wealth, what the actual number is. If you want to, save and invest $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 for yourself or for your kids, you need to save a certain amount of money today to make that happen. If you wait a week, a month, 6 months, a year, 5 years, you just need to save more and invest more to end up in exactly the same position. And I mentioned at the start, and at the moment, we're seeing share markets down, property market down. There's a lot of opportunity out there. So there's no better time to get started and taking a long-term view. You do need to be cautious with your risk management and be smart and make sure you're applying the principles that we've covered off through today. But doing that, it's a great time to be getting ahead and setting up the future success of your family. So, Olivia, I love this quote from Derek Sivers. He's a total legend if you're not around his stuff as well. He says, if information was the answer, we'd all be billionaires with perfect apps. And it talks to the fact that more information is not the answer. I hope that you guys have got some great ideas from what we've covered today. But ideas and plans are not going to turn into results and outcomes. You've got to take action and make it happen. Now, guys, I'm just going to jump into questions in a sec. But just before I do, this is what we help people with as well. A big part of what we do, help people invest more, get ahead. If you want to chat to us about if and how we can help, we do these 10-minute investing focus chats where basically talk through any opportunities for you, give you the opportunity to ask your questions and get them answered and understand your next steps and how to get started. So there's a link here. I'm going to pop that into the chat in a sec. And as I mentioned, you can get around our content and events if you're not already as well. We've also got, and I'll send this around. We'll send a follow-up note afterwards, but we're running a competition at the moment and giving away a year of free advice through the launch of our Smart Money Accelerator, which is a group training and education program that helps people save and invest more to get ahead. It's a really simple question you just need to answer one question and go into this draw. And we're giving away a year of access for free, which is worth $7,000 something. So you can get around that. I just put that link into the chat, and thanks for all the questions, guys. I'm going to answer, I'm going to jump into them there. Keep those questions coming through as well. Jimmy says, investing in our name versus investing in kids' name, currently investing in ETFs in my name for longer growth returns. Thoughts? Yeah, Jimmy, look, it's like I mentioned with the tax implications that you can invest in your kids' name, but the tax ends up in most cases being a lot higher. So that can be really, punitive and mean that you're not, you're not ending up with as much that you can actually grow. The downside is, though, that you will need to transfer the investments to your kids in the future, which is a capital gains tax event. But I find that for most people that they just want to do something to help their kids. So it's not like they're trying to avoid tax. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of ways that you can do that legally. So for a lot of people, that ends up being the right approach. Chris said, for protecting generational wealth, thoughts on testamentary trusts. I love testamentary trusts. So basically, testamentary trusts are trusts that are established on death, where assets pass from parents to children. Now, the big benefit of testamentary trusts is that you can stream income to children who are taxed as adults. I mentioned that minors get taxed with a punitive rate of tax if they're earning investment income on investments owned in their name. It's not the same with a testamentary trust. So basically, minor kids, i.e. your kids and your grandkids, like their kids, can all earn up to $20,000 tax-free. So say you've got millions of dollars in investments, you put a testamentary, you basically include a testamentary trust provision in your will, and then when you pass away, your assets go into this trust. Your kids have full control over those assets, and they can dissolve the trust at any time really easily with very limited cost, maybe not no cost, but very limited cost. And they're getting all of the tax benefits in the meantime. So I love them. I got a testamentary trust in my will. I made my mum put one in her will as well. There's not a lot of downside other than the few bucks to actually set it up in the first place as well. So I hope that helps, Chris. Got a question here. Could you please explain tax if you're investing for your kids, i.e. investing for the next 18 years, for example, do you still have to pay tax annually on those shares, even though you're not really touching your investments for years? Or are you only paying tax if in 1 year you withdraw the money from your investments? Really great question. So basically with any investment, with most investments, there's 2 forms of income or assessable taxable income that you can receive. One is the dividend income from the shares, and the second is capital gains when you sell the shares. If you own the investment account in your name and you're receiving dividend income, even if that dividend income is being reinvested, the dividend income needs to be recorded on your tax return as assessable income, and you need to pay tax on that income, unfortunately. When you sell the investments in the future, then you will realize a capital gain. So say you sell them down to cash, give your kids cash, or you transfer them to your kids in the future. Again, capital gains tax event, and there will be some tax to be paid. So I hope that makes sense. Let me know if there's a follow-up to there. Just want to jump into some of the questions that people submitted through Care for Kids, and I'll probably stick around for another couple of minutes because I can see that there's actually tons of questions coming through. For anyone that wants to stick around, very welcome. So what's a good savings amount to aim for each pay, i.e. percentage of salary to save? Yeah, look, that's a good question. I am a little bit anti-specific percentages because sometimes for some people, 5% can be enough. For most people, it's probably not. I know that the average savings rate in Australia is 4.5% at the moment, which is really low. But it really depends on you. I think that the right amount, to give you a more direct answer, the right amount to save is an amount that allows you to achieve the goals that you want, hit the targets that you want for your money for the future. And how you want to do that is to set some clear investment targets or do some goal setting around your investments so that you can see, if you save $20 a week, what does that mean for where your wealth or your investments or your kids' investment account will be in 6 months, a year, 5 years? So, I think, sorry, it's not more directed. I know that journalists often get upset when I refuse to give them a percentage return because I know percentages are nice and easy, but it's really about thinking about what's the impact and then, how happy are you with that? Best tips to create a family budget that allows for some savings. Look, I think the things that I mentioned, going through those different account types are probably the best tips that I would say. Creating a system around your banking and your budget that actually works is probably even more important. I didn't have enough time to go right into the ins and outs of how that framework works with the different bank accounts, but that is an absolute game changer. It has been for me personally, and we've helped like thousands of people do that now. It does make it easy to save because everyone's done a budget that doesn't work. So it's not about just having a good budget plan, but it's about having a good saving system that makes it easier for you to save. Back in my day, we had Commonwealth Bank Dolomites. Is there something better these days? Look, I was a Dolomite kid as well, and CBA have still got me now, so does something for brand loyalty there. But I would say that particularly if you're saving money for the long term for your kids, probably investing it into the share market as opposed to cash. If it's going to be there for 10 years or 15 years, you're saving in cash, you're probably hardly keeping up with inflation, if at all. And shares will grow much faster. You need to be prepared for the market returns and understand the risks that come with that. But I would say that it's going to mean that there's a lot more money there for your kids in the future as well. So I would tend to stick with that. In terms of saving specific accounts, I am not too sure exactly what the best deals are out there, but I know that there's some great comparison sites out there that you can use as well. got a question about how can I set myself up to get loans without an income for an expectant mum that's about to step away from her work. I think you need to get a good mortgage broker on your side there as well. Good mortgage broker that has a good experience with this. I think that's really crucial. I'm not a mortgage expert. I know a bit about mortgages and mortgage strategy, but a mortgage broker will know the market and be able to suggest the right lender that can achieve what it is that you want to achieve. So I think it's really important that you've got a good partner in there as well. I hope that one is helpful. How much should I put away for my kids that it will make a difference in the long run? Well, hopefully the examples that I already shared give you some indication of that as well. Once again, use the compound interest calculator. Check out that video that's on the Pivot Wealth website, Pivot Wealth on the Replace Your Salary by Investing book page. Go through all of that stuff. Check it out. That will allow you to know, what, like I said, saving $5 a day, $10 a day, what that will actually do. Al says, what is the most cost-effective option for recurring deposits in kids' long-term investing, such as an ETF, noting that brokerage fees will add up over time? Well, using a micro-investing option as instead of an ETF, Al, will generally mean that you don't pay a brokerage fee at all. So that's what I mean when I can say it could be more cost-effective. And where that is particularly relevant is if you're saving and investing, say, $5 a day or $2 a day, then you don't want to be paying brokerage every day. It doesn't make any sense. But if you look at as well the different platforms out there, thankfully trading is getting more cost effective out there. I know that there's a number of providers like Stake, I think are probably the cheapest ones out there. They're like $3. I think CommSec Pocket have like $0 trades up to a certain level. Perla is only $5.50 trades if you prepay as well. So much cheaper than like your CommSecs and E-Trades that are out there too. I would say that choosing an account that allows you to automate your transfers is probably going to be really powerful there. I know for me, I just can't, as much as I'm a money guy and I enjoy money, I enjoy investing, I don't want to have to be my investing to be reliant on me getting into the market. And I don't want to be sitting there agonizing about the price as well. I just invest every Wednesday. I've got an automatic setup in my account and that's how it goes. So I hope that helps. Question from Eric says, cover generational wealth of people on the journey. For the older generation, what things would you consider to transfer any wealth left? Well, I think hopefully the comments around testamentary trusts gave you some insight there. I think that is a bit of a no-brainer for a lot of people. Not a lot of downside, tons of potential upside around that. Also think about giving while you're still around, then you can enjoy the giving a bit more. It means that you can also really directly control what actually happens there as well. So yeah, I would say that they're probably the main ones, depending on the size, that you probably want to seek out maybe some good advice around that as well. But the key is doing it in a way that's tax effective. Trusts are good, and testamentary trusts quite good because it can allow you to bloodline your assets and protect them from marriage breakdown in the future as well. Like if you guys worked hard, build up a nest egg, you want to pass it down to your kids, you want it to be for their benefit, not form part of their assets if they get into a relationship and then have a relationship breakdown. And then you see that the money that you worked really hard to save sort of going out the door with it. So I'd say that's probably a really important consideration as well. Got a question from Ash. How do we pick a good financial planner for advice? And can you help people all over Australia? Have you actually read all those books behind you? Thanks, Ash. Appreciate the question. So yes, I have read all of the books behind me, and Get Unstuck, which is the black one that you can see multiple copies of because it's my book. I've read it a whole bunch of times. So every time I read it, I put another copy up there. But look, yeah, how do you pick a good financial advisor? I think you find people that help people like you. That's probably a good starting point. Someone that's an expert in solving your problems, really key. Because it's like you can't be all things to all people. Like I know for us at Pivot Wealth, we tend to work with people that are 30s and 40s, higher income, that are still in the process of building up their assets and wealth for the future. if you've got a financial advisor and they're trying to work with business owners one day, retirees another day, self-managed super funds another day, high net wealth another day, it's really hard to run an effective business and be an expert in solving all of the problems that all of those people have. So when you triple down on solving a particular set of problems, you can become an expert in those problems and what to look out for. So I'd say that that's probably a good starting point. Look at their online presence, reviews, those sorts of things. They're generally good as well. Ask for recommendations. Be careful with that, though, because you want to make sure that you're asking people that have a financial position the same as you, not just people that you're mates with or people in your family. But yeah, most financial planners like us, we work with people all over the country because it's easy to do that these days with Zoom and those sorts of things. We were always pretty tech heavy, but I think COVID has just accelerated that transition as well. So hope that helps, Ash. Thanks for the question. Just going to take 2 more questions, and if there's any other ones, we can you can shoot us a note and we can follow those up. So we've been looking at ETF investment for our kids. Is this the best option? If so, what ETFs do you recommend? And is there a way to minimize tax when you cash them in? What is the best way to find ethical ETF options? Look, ETFs, I think ETFs, I would generally say that the administration requirements involved with a managed fund are generally prohibitive, and I just can't be bothered with that. So I tend to stay away from those. ETFs and micro investing are the 2 probably main ones that I would be looking at if I was just getting started. ETFs, you have a bit more control, but you do also have to choose. Although, like I said, I tend to favor an index fund investing approach. So I would just look at the index investments. For my kids, I use a Vanguard ETF that has some Australian shares, some international shares. It's what's called a diversified ETF. So that can be good for long-term in that you got one investment that's covering all of the bases. There are, though, if you want ethical investments, that there's a number of good ones that are out there increasing all of the time. Vanguard have an ethical investment index ETF. So you can, if you want ethical, you can get ethical index and ethical active or non-index investments. So depending, it's hard to answer that question really, because ethical is like, what are your values? What's actually important to you? And how do you choose, are the banks ethical? Is Woolworths ethical? Different people answer that question differently. But I would say looking at that, because I do advocate an index fund investing approach, then that would be what I would do personally, but you've got to be comfortable with that. If you were, then I think that can be a great place to, to look at as a starting point, nice and diversified, low cost, consistent risk as well. Good question from Chris. Last question here. When setting up a brokerage account for mum and dad for an index fund, for example, what are your views on setting up a joint account rather than 2 individual accounts to future-proof your children's investment in the event of an unfortunate divorce? Would it be best to set up a joint account? Found some restrictions with joint account names, e.g. no micro investing. Well, look, what I'd say is that if you're looking to set up your investments in a way to protect from separation, generally all of your investments are going to form part of a settlement in the event of a separation anyway. So whether you've got individual accounts or joint accounts probably doesn't make that much difference. Practically, from an access perspective, then, that's a slightly different consideration, but one that you can't really protect against that much, whether you've got joint or individual accounts. But I would say that you probably want to look from a tax planning perspective. If you had someone where you knew that their taxable income and therefore tax rate was going to be a lot lower, probably going to be a lot more efficient from a tax perspective to invest that way rather than investing in a higher income, paying a higher rate of tax. But either of them can be good. And as I said, that particularly if you're just getting started, the tax implications are unlikely to be very significant. Know that you can get started and then change over time. Well, guys, look, really appreciate the questions. And thanks to so many people sticking around as well. Apologies, because I could keep going all day with this. But guys, if there's anything that's really that you're not sure of, jump in. I put those links in to, if you want to book a call with us, you can chat through all of that stuff. There's a ton of content on the Pivot Wealth website. Appreciate all the thanks coming through, guys. You are very welcome. Once again, big shout out to Care for Kids for presenting on this event and making it happen. Check them out as well. And guys, I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.